He didn't fall in love with my daughter. He fell in love with what he thought she would inherit. What Brandon Ellis never expected was that while he was planning his move, I was 3 steps ahead, burying every trace of the $6.4 million legacy my grandfather built from sweat, land, and secrets. My name is Thomas Granger. I'm a retired federal tax investigator living quietly in Ashland, Oregon. After my wife died, it was just me and Anna. I raised her the best I could, on a salary and instinct, teaching her to be strong but never cynical. She trusted too easily. I noticed that early. When Brandon came into our lives, he brought charm, ambition, and a past wrapped too tightly to unravel. And from the first handshake, I knew this wasn't a man in love, this was a man on a mission. What he didn't know, I still had one left in me too. Every father has a quiet line he won't let anyone cross. Brandon didn't just cross mean, he sprinted past it. As winter gave way to spring, Ashland warmed, but something inside me stayed cold. Anna had always been steady, graceful, thoughtful, dependable. After her mother passed, she became my anchor. She told me she met Brandon at a nonprofit event. Her cheeks flushed when she spoke of him. He's different, Dad. Kind, driven. I wanted to believe her. But something about Brandon felt rehearsed. He was polished, charming, and too smooth, like someone who'd told the same stories too many times. Still, I said nothing. Anna seemed happy, and I wasn't ready to cast shadows on her light. Then I met Marjorie Ellis. Elegant, calculating, always dressed like she was walking into a board meeting. She ran some vague legacy consulting firm and spoke in a tone that felt cold despite the smiles. We had dinner at their immaculate West Hills home. Marjorie greeted me like a formality, Brandon trailing behind her like a prop. During dinner, I watched Anna shrink. Her voice stayed soft, her edges smoothed. When Marjorie complimented Anna's grounded simplicity, it felt more like a polite dismissal than praise. Later, Brandon and Marjorie slipped away for a call, something about investors. Anna said it was normal, but I didn't like it. There was no proof, just a quiet warning in my gut, and I'd learned to trust that feeling. It was a gray Thursday morning when Marjorie Ellis arrived at my door. No call, no warning, just her luxury sedan pulling up the driveway like it belonged there. I opened the door, and there she stood, flawless hair, sharp eyes, and a smile that didn't quite reach her face. "Thomas," she said sweetly, "I thought I'd drop by for a visit. It's been too long." I offered tea. She accepted, settling into the kitchen as if inspecting every surface. "You've kept things modest," she said, glancing around. "Anna has always liked quiet places. Let's hope she doesn't forget them." Her voice was sugar. Her words were daggers. She talked about Brandon, how focused he was, how well connected. He's always been quick to lead, a natural protector. It sounded like praise, but felt like control. Then came the subtle prodding. "Do you think Anna's ready for the changes ahead? There's so much responsibility involved when marrying into certain expectations." I didn't answer. I only listened. Every sentence told me something. She wasn't here to bond. She was here to measure the worth of what her son was marrying into. When she finally left, the house felt smaller, quieter, and I stood in the doorway, watching her car vanish behind the trees. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just a love story. It was a transaction, and Anna was at the center of something much colder than I'd feared. The sun was dipping low by the time I made it back inside, golden light slanting through the windows and stretching long across the living room floor. The air in the house felt heavier after Marjorie's visit, as if her carefully curated words had seeped into the walls. Later that evening, Anna came by for dinner. She looked radiant, like always, but there was a hurried energy about her, a glow that flickered just a little too brightly. "I stopped by that little bistro Brandon likes," she said, dropping her bag by the door. "We finalized the date. 6 weeks from now. Isn't that great?" I turned from the kitchen counter, heart pausing for a beat. 6 weeks? She nodded, slipping into a chair. Why wait? Everything's falling into place. The venue, the guest list, even the florist. Brandon's mom has been helping me organize it all. She knows people. I dried my hands and sat across from her, searching her face. "Anna, are you sure you're not rushing this?" She blinked, smile fading just slightly. "Dad, don't start." "I'm not trying to question your choice," I said gently. But marriage isn't just a timeline or a checklist. It's a life. A lifetime. She leaned back, folding her arms. You think I don't know that? Number, I think you're caught in a whirlwind, I said carefully. And maybe you haven't had a moment to just stop and think. A moment for yourself, without Brandon beside you, without his mother influencing plans, without the noise and expectations from everyone else. Just space to hear your own voice. Her jaw tightened. You think I'm naive, she said quietly. You always have. You see me as that kid in the school play who forgot her lines. That's not true. I love him, Dad. And I'm marrying him, with or without your approval. The finality in her voice left a hollow in my chest. She grabbed her bag, moving toward the door. I followed her slowly, the creak of the floorboards louder than I remembered. Anna, I'm not your enemy. She paused, hand on the doorknob. Then stop acting like it. And just like that, she was gone. I stood alone in the hallway, the evening shadows swallowing the last of the light. My hand found the wall for balance. I had spent her whole life protecting her from scraped knees and broken hearts. But now, in the most important choice she'd ever make, I wasn't part of it. I wasn't even trusted. And that helplessness, the quiet ache of being needed less and understood even less, settled over me like dust. 2 days passed in quiet tension after Anna's departure. I tried to lose myself in routine morning walks along the riverfront, fixing equipment in my workshop, and cataloging old files, but everything felt muted, as though I were drifting in someone else's life. On the third morning, the clouds finally gave way to clear sky. I decided to walk into town for groceries and vitamin pills. Willamette Street looked unchanged, shopkeepers at their windows, cars idling, people chatting. It felt warmer somehow, even though I still wore my coat. Approaching the cereal aisle in the local market, I reached for a box just as another hand did the same. I apologized automatically. The man I nearly bumped into looked surprised, then brightened. Thomas Granger? He said, a familiar tone in his voice. I blinked twice before recognition hit. Caleb Weller? I asked. It turned out to be an old friend, once my colleague in federal investigations at the IRS, whom I hadn't seen in almost 20 years. We agreed to grab coffee down the block at a quiet cafe where the barista knew us both by name. Caleb looked as sharp as ever, though gray edges had invaded his hair. The years hadn't dimmed his eyes. In the cozy corner booth we carved out, the years fell away as we spoke about life, retirement, and the weight of keeping secrets. Then I told him about 3 things. That Anna was getting married in 6 weeks, that Brandon Ellis was her fiancé, and that something felt wrong. I sketched out Marjorie's visit, Brandon's smooth charisma, and Anna's hurried cheer. I didn't share everything, just enough to alert an old ally. Caleb's expression shifted. He set his coffee down slowly, lips pressing tight. Brandon Ellis, he said simply. I swallowed. Yes. Caleb leaned back. Does the name Three Pines Capital mean anything to you? I shook my head. He continued. It's a shell company tied to multiple suspicious transactions. Clients complain of funds disappearing, accounts frozen, people losing life savings. He tapped the table twice. Brandon Ellis is in the mix. They've investigated him under a different alias too. 2 prior engagements, 2 dissolutions, cash flow, significant transfers. Nothing criminal so far, no victims pressing charges, but enough smoke to drown in. I met the bottom of my cup. You're saying he's being watched? He's watched closely. Not enough evidence for prosecution yet, but enough to raise red flags. And now he's marrying your daughter. The weight of that sentence settled in my chest like ice. My daughter was walking into something far more precarious than I ever imagined. Caleb leaned forward. If you want, I can help you dig quietly. Pull financial records, look up aliases, verify property titles discreetly. I hesitated, then nodded. Anything. Thank you. He wrote his number on a napkin. If you hear something off, call me. No judgment, just facts. As he stood to leave, he looked at me clearly and said, You've always known when something smelled wrong. That instinct is your best tool right now. We parted, and I walked back toward home in silence. The street felt sharper, every detail more stark, the cracks in the sidewalk, the mailboxes rusted at angles, the willow trees swaying overhead. It felt like stepping into a stage set. Everything familiar, but saturated with new meaning. Anna hadn't just found love. She was part of a transaction, one threaded through lies, assets, and old money, and the man she was about to marry had footprints on file. That walk back didn't just bring me groceries, it brought confirmation, clarity, a turning point. If Brandon thought he could slip into our life unseen, he had underestimated two things: a father's suspicion and an ally who once uncovered corporate fraud for a living. From now on, every step I took would be deliberate, every move they made recorded, every claim tested. Because now this wasn't personal. This was a fight. That evening, after a quiet dinner alone, I sat in my study, the desk lamp casting long shadows across the walls. The house still felt empty, Anna's absence echoing in every quiet corner. My meeting with Caleb had stirred something, an old instinct mixed with a flicker of hope I hadn't dared to feel in years. The silence was thick until my phone buzzed on the table. A message from Caleb. Need full name and any business connections. I typed back, Brandon Ellis, connected to Denson Realty. Also, check Marjorie Ellis, his mother. Within minutes, he replied. Brandon's name already flagged in a past civil dispute. Digging further, I set the phone down and stood. Every step toward the closet felt heavier than the last. Inside, behind dusty accounting ledgers, sat a small steel lockbox I hadn't touched since last fall, the day my father's will was finalized. I unlocked it slowly. Inside, documents lay neatly stacked. Land titles, investment portfolios, timber and water rights across Oregon and Northern California. Not 9 million, as stories like these often boast, but a solid $6.4 million built carefully over generations. My grandfather had started it all with a land grant in the late 1952nd. My father grew it, quietly and with purpose. There was also a letter, handwritten, folded carefully. Thomas, protect this. Not everyone who smiles means well. Tell Anna only when it's safe. Use this when blood is threatened. I'd kept that promise for nearly a year. Now, I wasn't so sure how much longer I could hold it. The next morning, Caleb returned, this time with a sealed folder. His expression was more serious than before. You were right to be cautious, he said, placing it on the desk. Brandon's connected to a shell company registered out of Boise. Money's been moving, quietly property flips, fast turnovers, false valuations. Denson Realty might just be the tip of it. I opened the folder names, bank records, links between Brandon and people under federal watch. A chill settled in my bones. I closed it again. I'll keep following it, Caleb said. But if I were you, I'd keep that inheritance sealed tight. Don't even breathe near a lawyer until we have more. I nodded, quietly locking the box again. This time, I didn't return it to the closet. I took it downstairs to the basement, where old paint cans and retired power tools gathered dust. Behind a loose panel in the wall, a spot only I knew, I slid the box in, covered it with layers of insulation, and replaced the wooden slats carefully. Then I pulled a dusty shelf back into place, disguising everything as if it had never been touched. This wasn't just about caution anymore. It was survival. The days leading up to the wedding blurred into ritual. Smiles were practiced, flowers arranged, menus finalized. Anna's excitement returned like a slow thaw, and I played along, not wanting to dim what little light remained in her eyes. I let her believe everything was fine. On the surface, I was the supportive father, but each time I looked at Brandon, something old and warning stirred in my gut. And whenever Marjorie hovered near Anna, I sensed a different kind of hunger behind her rehearsed politeness. On the morning of the ceremony, sunlight poured through the tall windows of St. Cecilia's chapel, painting the pews in golden hues. I wore the navy suit Anna picked out for me, smiling at guests, nodding to relatives I hadn't seen in years. But beneath the pleasantries, tension simmered. I hadn't told Anna about Caleb or the inheritance. I couldn't, not yet. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Anna glowed in lace and silk, Brandon looked sharp in his tailored tux, and the officiant spoke with warmth. I walked her down the aisle with a heart like stone, my smile fixed, my grip steady. Then came the reception. The venue, a rustic winery just outside town, was filled with laughter and toasts, clinking glasses, and hopeful chatter. It all felt rehearsed, choreographed. But then, just as the sun dipped below the vineyard hills, the atmosphere shifted. A man in a beige blazer entered, carrying a leather briefcase and scanning the room with purpose. He approached Brandon first, then whispered something to Marjorie. Her expression tightened, but she nodded. The man turned to me. "Mr. Granger?" His voice was flat, rehearsed. "I'm a notary. I've been asked to oversee the execution of a document related to asset consolidation." The words hit me like a slap. Brandon appeared at my side, all smiles. "It's just paperwork," he said lightly. "Standard stuff. You'll see." I looked down at the folder the notary was opening. My name, Anna's, some legalese about marital property and estate declarations. They weren't wasting time. I took a slow breath. "I won't be signing anything tonight." Brandon's grin faltered. Marjorie stepped in smoothly. "It's routine, Thomas, really. You wouldn't want to delay their fresh start over red tape, would you?" I turned to face her fully. "Routine or not, you don't serve legal documents at your own son's wedding." This was calculated. The notary hesitated. "Perhaps we should return another time." "No," I said, voice even. "You won't return at all." Anna, seeing the commotion, rushed over. "Dad, what's going on?" Before I could answer, Brandon spoke, too quickly. "It's just documents, no big deal." But Anna wasn't buying it. Her gaze bounced between us, and something cracked in her face, a flicker of fear or doubt. I stepped closer to her, lowering my voice. "We'll talk later. But don't sign anything. Not today." The notary packed up quietly and left. Brandon tried to salvage the mood with another toast, but the air had shifted. The facade was cracking. And as I watched them scramble, a new thought began to rise within me, quiet but solid. They had made their move. Now it was my turn. For too long, I had been careful, quiet, waiting for the right moment. But I had seen enough. Their tactics weren't just arrogant. They were dangerous. This wasn't just about protecting Anna anymore. It was about exposing everything. The lies, the manipulation, the fraud. And deep in my chest, something old and fierce stirred. I wasn't finished. I was preparing to fight back. The wedding had ended with forced smiles and tight handshakes, but the weight of what happened with the notary lingered long after the last guest left. 2 nights passed in silence. I hadn't heard from Anna. She hadn't answered my calls. My gut twisted with every passing hour. Part of me feared she had chosen to believe Brandon, to stay inside the illusion. But another part, quieter, older, held on to something else. The hope that truth, once seen, could not be unseen. Then, on the 3rd evening, I heard the knock. I opened the front door to find Anna standing on the porch. Her makeup was faded, her eyes red, as if she had been crying for hours. She didn't speak at first. Just walked in, dropped her purse, and sat at the edge of the couch like her legs could barely hold her. "I read something I wasn't supposed to," she said finally, voice thin. I sat down across from her, waiting. "In Brandon's briefcase," she continued, "there was a file. Legal documents. Financial records. One of them was a deed with my name on it, but the signature wasn't mine." The room went still. She pulled a folded paper from her coat pocket and handed it to me. I recognized the seal. It looked official, but my trained eye caught the detail instantly. The notary stamp was fake. I looked up at her. "Did you confront him?" She nodded. "I asked him about it. He told me I must have forgotten signing it, that I was tired that day, that I'd had wine. Dad, I don't drink." Her voice cracked at the end. "He tried to gaslight you," I said gently. Her hands trembled. "I don't know what's real anymore. He tells me he loves me. Then he does this. And his mother. She just watches, like I'm some investment being managed." The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken truths. "You were right," she whispered. "I didn't want to see it, but now I do." I moved beside her, not saying anything, just offering presence. Her head sank into my shoulder like it had when she was a child, and the world had gone too loud. After a while, I said, "You don't need to figure this out alone." She nodded against me. "What do I do?" "First, you stay here," I said. "Just for now. No calls, no explanations. You rest. You're safe here." A flicker of relief passed across her face, though fear still lingered in her eyes. "I feel so stupid," she murmured. "You are not stupid," I said firmly. "You were manipulated. There's a difference, and the fact that you're here means you saw through it. That matters." That night, I turned off the porch lights, checked every lock twice. Anna was home again, and this time I would not let her walk into danger alone. Morning came with heavy clouds and silence. Anna was still asleep upstairs, her bag tucked beside the bed like she hadn't decided whether to stay or run. I left a note on the kitchen table and drove into town. I needed space to think, but more than that, I needed answers. At Caleb's office, the blinds were half drawn and the air smelled of burnt coffee. He looked up from his desk and nodded. "She came home?" he asked. I nodded. "And she brought proof." Caleb's eyes narrowed. "Then we press forward." He slid a thin folder across the desk. I started running Brandon's history through older legal databases. Found something buried in divorce filings from Arizona. Different name, same birthday, same face. He handed me a photograph. Brandon, slightly younger, arm around another woman in front of a courthouse. Happy, or pretending to be. They were married for 14 months, Caleb continued. She filed for annulment after discovering forged documents tied to her family's ranch. Nearly lost it in a fraudulent loan deal. Sound familiar? I didn't respond. My throat had gone dry. "Here's the kicker," he said. "She never pressed charges. Her father settled privately, paid Brandon to disappear." I flipped through the pages. Financial records, legal transcripts, screenshots from archived social media. Brandon had scrubbed it all almost. "But that woman isn't just a story," Caleb said. "She's still in Tucson. I found a phone number. She might talk, especially if she knows someone else is walking into the same trap." I nodded slowly. This wasn't a pattern. It was a method. Brandon had done this before. He knew how to move fast, win trust, create pressure, and when the foundation cracked, he vanished with just enough distance to avoid prosecution. I stood, the weight of it settling on my shoulders. "I want to speak to her." Caleb handed me a note. "Already arranged, this afternoon, over the phone." Outside, the air felt colder. I sat in my truck for a while, the folder on the passenger seat, my hands still on the wheel. It was no longer just a feeling in my gut. I had proof. A name. A story. A trail of destruction Brandon had left behind, hidden under smiles and custom suits. Back home, Anna was still upstairs. I didn't wake her. I needed her strong, not shaken. She would hear the truth, but not as a shock. She'd hear it with her father beside her, not as a victim, but as a survivor. I looked out the window toward the road. Brandon had fooled a family once. He wouldn't get the chance to do it again. Not this time. By the time the sun dipped behind the pines that evening, I had spoken with her. Rachel, that was her name. She was Brandon's ex-wife, the woman whose life he had nearly dismantled in Tucson, Arizona. Her voice was calm, but beneath it, I could hear years of damage carefully stitched together. She told me how Brandon had appeared like a solution, then quietly dismantled her family's land holdings using forged documents, false trust agreements, and a trail of sweet lies. It wasn't until the foreclosure notice arrived that she saw the full picture. "Brandon always made it seem like he was helping," she said, "even when everything was slipping away. She never pressed charges. Her father paid Brandon to disappear." I thanked her and hung up, staring out my truck window for a long while. The next morning, I met Caleb at his office. He had already printed out the new report, a transcript. "I had a feeling Brandon would talk eventually," Caleb said, "so I asked a contact to plant an audio recorder at the cafe where he met his attorney yesterday." He slid the paper across the desk. My eyes scanned the lines until I reached it. "Brandon, once I get access, I'm out. Sell the property. Liquidate. Leave the rest to the cleanup." Then another line followed, colder, crueler. "Brandon, Anna, she's sweet, but she's just the key. You don't keep the key after you open the vault." I stopped reading. My jaw tightened. That sentence echoed in my head like a slap I hadn't seen coming. My hand clenched the edge of the paper, crumpling the corner. Caleb looked at me. I knew that would hit hard. I stood slowly, forcing my voice to stay steady. "She's not a key. She's my daughter." I walked to the window, staring out without seeing anything. "No one," I said, voice low, "talks about my child like that and walks away untouched. He thought she was a door to be opened. He thought she was disposable." I turned back to Caleb. "He's wrong." I picked up the flash drive from the desk. This is not just evidence. This is justice waiting to happen. I'm not just going to stop him. I'm going to make sure Anna's name, her worth, is never dragged like that again." Caleb nodded. "We're ready. I'll file everything with the district attorney today. Back at home, I placed the flash drive and transcript in the lockbox. Then I encrypted one final version and uploaded it. When I stepped into the living room, Anna looked up. She didn't need to ask. She saw something in my face. And for the first time, I saw something in hers too. A flicker of trust. A signal that the silence between us had meaning. That night, I didn't just prepare for court. I prepared to take back my daughter's dignity. The day of the hearing arrived, cloaked in rain. Outside the courthouse, gray clouds hung low over the town like a warning. Inside, the air buzzed with quiet tension. Anna sat beside me, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Across the aisle, Brandon leaned in to whisper something to his attorney. A thin smirk curled at the corner of his mouth. He still thought he would win. The judge entered. The room rose, and the proceedings began. Brandon's legal team moved quickly. Within minutes, they presented the deed, a signed and witnessed transfer of partial property rights, as the attorney called it. Brandon sat back with the confidence of someone who had rehearsed this performance down to every detail. I watched Anna flinch as her name was spoken. Caleb stood next. Calm, precise. He requested the document be submitted to the court's verification system. Then, his voice changed. Your Honor, we have reason to believe this document is fraudulent. I request permission to submit counter evidence. The judge raised an eyebrow but nodded. Caleb opened a slim folder and handed over copies detailed analysis of mismatched signatures, notary records that didn't exist, a stamp style that had been discontinued 5 years ago. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. And then came the flash drive. Caleb looked directly at Brandon as he spoke. We also submit an audio recording obtained legally of Mr. Ellis discussing his intentions regarding this very estate. The courtroom fell silent as the recording played. Brandon's voice filled the chamber, unmistakable. Once I get access, I'm out. Sell the property, liquidate, leave the rest to the cleanup. And then the blow that made Anna's breath hitch. Anna? She's sweet, but she's just the key. You don't keep the key after you open the vault. Marjorie gasped. The room shifted. Even the judge's jaw tightened. But the real shift came next. Your Honor, Caleb continued, turning slightly, we also request the court recognize a key witness who has flown in voluntarily. Rachel Adler, former spouse of the defendant. Gasps. Brandon's eyes widened. He turned slowly, and there she was. Rachel, calm, composed, stepping into the witness stand. That was Caleb's twist. He hadn't told even me. Brandon's face drained of color. The judge allowed a short recess to review new testimony. Marjorie stood up and snapped. This is character assassination, her voice sharp, shrill. My son is being hunted. The judge turned toward her. Ma'am, one more outburst and you will be removed from the courtroom. Marjorie sat, lips pressed into a bitter line. The mask was off. Anna stared ahead, unmoving. When we stepped outside into the cold air, her voice trembled. She believed everything, and she was part of it. I placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Now the truth has its place. That matters. Behind us, the courtroom doors remained closed. But inside, the tide had turned, and Brandon Ellis was no longer in control. The courtroom was silent when the judge returned to his bench. The atmosphere had shifted. The air no longer buzzed with tension, but pressed down like something final was about to fall. Anna sat still beside me, her eyes fixed ahead. Brandon no longer looked confident. His suit, his smirk, the calm calculation, they were gone. In their place sat a man, unraveling by the minute. His lawyer leaned in, whispering, but Brandon stared straight ahead, unblinking. The judge cleared his throat. In light of the new evidence, both documentary and testimonial, the court finds significant cause to declare the property transfer null and void. A small gasp escaped Anna's lips. My hand found hers and squeezed. The judge continued, voice even but firm. Furthermore, the court refers the matter to the district attorney's office for criminal investigation, including suspected fraud, falsification of legal documents, and attempted misappropriation of trust assets. He looked directly at Brandon. Mr. Ellis, you may wish to retain separate criminal counsel. This court is also requesting an inquiry into Miss Marjorie Ellis for potential complicity and obstruction. The room tilted for a moment. Marjorie's face twisted not in shock, but in outrage. She stood as if to protest, then caught the judge's eye, and slowly sat back down, her posture rigid. For the first time, Her silence had weight. Brandon slumped in his chair, one hand gripping the edge of the table. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "They set me up." No one responded. Outside, the wind stirred as the hearing adjourned. People filtered out slowly, murmuring. Reporters stood waiting on the courthouse steps. I ignored them. Anna and I walked side by side, saying nothing until we reached the edge of the parking lot. Then she stopped. I thought I was broken," she whispered. I turned to face her. "You were never broken, just hurt. That's different." Her eyes filled, and I saw the years of confusion, the ache of betrayal, the weight of misplaced trust all welling to the surface. "I let him into everything," she said. "He used my name, my heart, and I didn't see it. I opened my arms." She stepped into them. It was not the hug of a father protecting a little girl. It was the embrace of two people who had been through a storm and made it to shore. "I should have stopped it sooner," I murmured. She pulled back just enough to look at me. "You did. You're the only one who did." For a long moment we stood there, the courthouse behind us, the wind cool on our faces, and then Anna said softly, "Can we go home?" I smiled. "Yes. Let's go home." The storm had passed. That morning I brought Anna to the basement. From behind a wooden panel, I retrieved the old lockbox and placed it gently on the table. She watched quietly as I opened it, revealing bonds, deeds, and a faded envelope resting on top. I handed it to her. She unfolded the letter. My great-grandfather's handwriting was shaky but clear. Real wealth isn't money. It's knowing who to protect it from. Protect this family even from those who smile first and strike later. God didn't bless us with gold. He blessed us with each other. Anna looked up. "He really wrote this?" I nodded. He understood the weight of legacy. And who could steal it? We didn't say much after that. But something settled between us, quiet, unshakable. Not just closure. Faith. A family story that had nearly been rewritten by lies, reclaimed now by truth. And in the silence, I whispered a prayer not for justice, but for peace. Because only God knows how many stories He's saved before the final page. If this family story stirred something in you, pass it on. The right family story doesn't just inspire. It protects.